We're live.
Good morning. I'm Antoinette Mosley, the Chair of the Housing and Community Development Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to the March 17th, 2026 remote meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We're streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have the option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801 and using meeting code 9791. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9791. Your phone will be muted and you'll hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I'll now go through and introduce all community members and staff who are participating virtually. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Hello.
Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Hello.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
Assistant City Attorney Farley Gillingham.
Morning.
Community Economic Development Director Nikki Reed.
Good morning.
Community Development Division Manager James Shelton.
Good morning.
CDBG-DR Program Manager Elma King.
Good morning.
And Community Development Analyst Sophia Bonilla.
Hello.
And welcome to all the additional staff and participants. At this point, we'll move on to the first item on our agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from February 17th. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
And myself, aye. The motion passes unanimously. The second item on our agenda is the CDBG-DR Multi-Family Housing Program update. And here to walk us through it is Nikki Reed, Community Economic Development Director. Nikki.
Good morning. Thanks so much. I'm happy today to present on this item. Also joined by James and Elma, who can help fill in any gaps or answer any questions, as they are very familiar with this program as well. So next slide, please. So really what we're hoping to do today is kind of thinking through our next steps for our CDBG-DR housing program. In particular, today we're going to focus on our multifamily housing construction program. You'll see at the top line there, we have our allocation amounts. The application that we are proceeding with at this time for our multifamily projects was noticed for $10 million. That application closed on February 25th. If awarded, a balance of $18 million still remains in the CDBG-DR multifamily housing allocation. And we could consider that for future multifamily construction awards or for reallocation of funds for the single family home repair program. And as you all know, we are actively engaging our Housing Recovery Board to assist us with that decision making. But really today we want to give a heads up and an overview of the projects that have submitted for the multifamily program. Just as a reminder, these eligible projects are new multifamily construction projects within the city of Asheville city limits of at least 40 units, and they must leverage tax credit. So that's LIHTC or tax credit equity, either 4 or 9%, as administered through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. So good news is that we received a total of 13 applications. We were really excited by that. And after our first pass at eligibility, 12 of those applications are considered eligible. And those are the ones that we'll walk through today. And that totals 1,481 units, a total development cost of over $450 million. and a request of over 70 million in City of Asheville CDBG-DR funds. So again, I just want to express gratitude for the developers that came to the table, and we're really excited to have this excellent showing of capacity in our community to really put these CDBG-DR dollars at work. So for you all today, we're going to do just that high level overview, but it's also a time to prime for decision making that will come back to this committee on April 7th. So we do want to note that we have moved up next month's HCD meeting to occur on April 7th at 10 a.m. Such that we can have a robust conversation around the funding awards. So next slide, we'll get started. Okay, so just an overview of the program priorities for the multifamily construction program. First is really the disaster resilience component of our CDBG-DR funds, and then how that translated into our multifamily NOFO. So we integrated the enterprise green communities standards such that we had the options to mitigate multi-hazard risks. It includes adaptive planning and resilient site design for advanced flood protection. So that's our direct correlation, direct link to the mitigation component of our CDBG-DR. We also wanted to prioritize mixed income housing, really all within that affordability framework, but nonetheless leveraging the mixed income component of the low income housing tax credit income averaging. So that's going to see the range of 30% AMI to 80% AMI. But with that, we also stressed deep affordability. So you see some of that information there. And then the last piece is really to be strategic. So we really wanted to ensure that these DR funds have a lasting impact to Asheville's overall affordable housing. So next slide. So a little bit about the notice of funding. We launched with a $10 million NOFO specifically for shovel ready. And so that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later, just as we really start to frame how we're going to provide a decision making for these funds, is really to focus on what shovel ready means, because again, we want to see these projects that can occur on a timely basis to really put that money to work. So this initial rollout allows us to align with the spring LIHTC cycle as we continue to refine that strategy for the remaining funds. So again, noticing 10 million early such that we could see that happen in a shovel-ready manner. So it was published on January 21st. I really appreciate the staff moving quickly. Developers attended a virtual forum on January 30th. We received questions, responded, and then, as I said before, the application window closed on February 25th. Next slide. So a little bit of insights into the application criteria. This was published in the notice of funding as well. So developers really understood how we were seeking to evaluate the applications in full transparency. So the first category is, of course, the capacity of the applicant. LIHTC and these CDBG-DR funds have a lot of regulations. So we wanted to make sure that our applicants had the capacity to do the work. So that's really described there as having experience with the LIHTC program, and having a current 2026 or existing LIHTC application submitted there. The next part was really the need and extent of the problem. So really looking at the restricted rents relative to our CDBG-DR. Less CDBG for more affordability receives a higher score. So that's really thinking through that component about affordability. Soundness of approach, of course, we want to reward projects that have the likelihood of long-term viability. And that's really based on the commitment of reserve funding for those capital replacements. So as everyone knows, really trying to look through those pro formas to see that there is good planning for the future maintenance of the apartment buildings. Leveraging resources, so really understanding how we stretch our dollars with our funding, and how that complements other resources that are brought to bear with our developers. Last piece, achieving results. This is really the connection point with the Enterprise Green certification, which really promotes disaster resiliency and drives home our commitment to a responsive recovery. Next slide. So a little bit about this process. So again, the NOFO really detailed a lot of on the application evaluation process and guidance for those expectations. 12 out of the 13 applications were eligible. Applications and scores were reviewed, and we sent out letters requesting any kind of clarification that we needed from the applicants. All the scores are being finalized now, and we're really leveraging a cross-departmental steering committee to develop those funding recommendations for April. And then those awards will come before HCD on April 7th, followed through to City Council on April 14th. Next slide. Okay, so let's start to break down the applications. We're going to show a table here, then a map, and then we'll flip through line by line with a high-level summary of each project. Again, just as a primer for what we're looking forward to in the April timeframe for awards. So I want to draw your attention to two other elements that this table seeks to share, is also just the funding resources that are being requested from other entities. So I think this committee is well versed on how our funding, whether it's CDBG, whether it's Housing Trust Fund, whether it's CDBG-DR in this instance, how our funding is often leveraged with other resources as well. So we have a couple of indications of where we have projects that have sought Buncombe County funding, and also where projects have sought state CDBG-DR funding. I think those are important elements as we seek to really finalize our overall funding strategy. So again, I'm going to go through each of these in detail. So I'm really just going to let this table kind of be present here, but I want to proceed to the next slide, and then we'll get into detail on each of these. I just wanted to give a quick snapshot of each one. So if you'll advance the slide, Stephanie, because this is a really high level information, but like I said, we're going to go line by line. So that's just another demonstration of the data. And now, Steph, if you will change to the map, I think the other component about the map is really looking at, we have a diverse array of projects that really represent different parts of our city. So you'll see that we've tried to map these out just so we have a visual representation of where these projects are proposed. All right, so if next slide, we'll start to really get into some specifics and go to the next one. Okay, so little detail about Orchard Heights. It's located at 12 Airport Road. Woda Cooper Companies is the developer. Their request is 4.8 of city CDBG-DR. This is the site that is currently used as a trailer sales dealership. Jim Campen, that might ring a bell. Family housing here, it's a 9% tax credit project, 96 units at that mixed income range of 20 to 80% AMI, 35 years of affordability. You'll see the total development costs of 28 million, and that includes 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. So go ahead, Councilmember Turner.
Can you just highlight for us as you go through these, if they are new LIHTC developers to the area?
Excellent. I may see if my colleagues can also help me with that.
Like
And
this one
Sasha-
is, this one
Okay.
is. The one we heard on Tuesday also was. And so I just,
Yep.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Okay. And yes, I'll look to my counterparts, because I know some of these will have some name recognition and others we might not. So we'll do that. Okay, next slide. Harmony Housing. I'm curious if they are new to our community, but you'll recognize this property as one of the Buncombe County sites that were made available for affordable housing development. This is the downtown site at 50 Cox Avenue. Harmony Housing. I don't think the city of Asheville has worked with Harmony Housing before, so noting that. Their request for city CDBG-DR is 10 million. Downtown site, family housing, and so that's really just a differentiation between senior housing or family housing. It's a 4% deal, 203 units, so a good deal of units at this location, ranging from 20 to 80% AMI, 35 years affordability, and 81 million total development costs. Next slide. Ferry Road. So this is another property that the county had put forward for affordable housing development, and they secured development partners of Mountain Housing Opportunities and Urban Atlantic. Again, Mountain Housing, very familiar. Urban Atlantic, I think, is new, at least to the city from my perspective. But curious if anyone else has information there. The DR request of 10 million. And I think everyone is familiar with the large 137 acre parcel along the French Broad River that does have a conservation element of at least 50% of that land area. Family units, 4% LIHTC, 2060 80 AMI is represented here with 35 years of affordability and that total development cost of 54 million. All right, moving right along, next slide. Ferry Road 2, again, this is the second phase component of the Ferry Road site, partnership with Mountain Housing and Urban Atlantic. So there were separate applications from these partners and we're viewing them as separate applications. Their request here was for 3.5 million. The same site is listed. This is the senior component. So you'll see that housing type is listed as senior. So that's 62 plus, 4% LIHTC, 70 units with the range of incomes at 20, 60, and 80, and also 35 years of affordability and their total development cost of 21 million. All right, next slide. Arden Terrace, so this is address 3862 Sweeten Creek. Atlantic Housing Foundation. I don't think the city has worked with them in recent history, so I'm going to ask if Sasha has any awareness of Atlantic Housing in our community. She can come on screen if that's something to point out. The CDBG-DR request for this project is 10 million. It has direct access to Sweeten Creek Road, paved public road, with available sewer and water. Family housing type here. It's also a 4% LIHTC, 130 units at 30, 50, 60, 80. So those incomes will be served at this location. 35 years of affordability and our total development costs of 39 million. All right, next.
And Nikki,
Go ahead.
they haven't worked in the city before.
They have not?
No.
Okay.
Is
Go
it
ahead.
Is it the same Atlantic that's also partnering with MHO on the others?
No, it's two different.
Okay.
They're two different entities.
Thanks.
Great. Okay, Taft Mills Group. This is 986 Patton Avenue. I'll let Sasha address whether they have a local presence. At the end, I'll give a quick overview. So the CDBG-DR request here is 4.5 million. This is along the Patton Avenue corridor. So that's a primary transportation corridor. Family units, 4% tax credit, 136 total units at 20, 30, 60, 80 AMI. So you're seeing how our request to really approach a mixed income affordability has shown up in our applications. 35 years of affordability, total development cost of 47 million. And yes, Sasha, any insights on Taft Mills? They're a familiar name.
No, I mean, they haven't done business in the city before, and I don't think in Buncombe County. They've done projects in different parts of the state, though, and they've actually submitted a number of tax credit applications in the county, so, or city and county. So
Wait, so I just had to Google this address. And this is like in the stretch of Patton Avenue that we so desperately say it's supposed to be housing there, and we get car wash, car wash, car wash.
it's
Is
the
that
it's
correct?
the old mini golf site.
It's the mini golf site?
Yeah.
We have to lose mini golf? Okay.
All right, thanks for the questions there. Next slide, thank you. Terrace at River Hills. So this is 110 River Hills Road. This is a partnership with Mountain Housing and South Creek Development. Their request is 9.5 million. So there's no existing building improvements on the site. It's another family project, a 4% tax credit, 126 units at 20, 30, 50, 60, 80. So broad spectrum of affordability here. 35 years of affordability, total development costs of 42 million. And I think, of course, Mountain Housing is a familiar name. South Creek does not, I don't believe we've funded them in recent memory with our housing trust fund. So they're likely a newer partner, or would be a newer partner in this realm.
Nikki, I would just note that this was a site that was, went through council approval for a market rate development with 20% for a Luigi. And that
I
developer
remember.
was not able to follow that through. It's a difficult site, so,
It's over by Target, right?
yes.
I was just trying to recall why I knew this address. Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide. I think we have a couple more. Okay, District East Commons. So 1311 Tunnel Road, Commonwealth Development. Commonwealth, we have certainly worked with Commonwealth in the past with the Fairhaven Summit project, as well as a home-funded project of Fairhaven Meadows and Brevard. So the CDBG-DR request of 1.385 million. It's an infill site on a former commercial parcel, runs south from Tunnel Road to Swananoa River. This is a senior housing 9% LIHTC project with 93 units at 20, 30, 60, and 80% AMI, 35 years of affordability, and a total development cost of 26 million. All right, next slide. 319B Biltmore Avenue. So this is the city-owned parcel that is going to be in a long-term ground lease with the developer Laurel Street. So Laurel Street is a Charlotte developer that is doing the 319 Biltmore, the A side of the project. They're going to be breaking ground on that soon. And so this is the phase 2 of that project. Their DR request is 7 million. And this is the vacant site along Biltmore Avenue. Family units here, a 4% low-income housing tax credit site, 112 units with a range of AMIs from 20, 30, 60, 80. Again, 35 years of affordability. We're seeing that as a pretty constant across the developments here with a total development cost of 34 million. Okay, next slide. Apex on Hazel Mill. So this is the one that City Council saw through the public hearing on Tuesday of last week. So 383 North Louisiana Avenue, Blue Ridge Cascade. And of course, as we know, this is a newer development group to our community. A DR request of 4.5 million. It's a vacant, largely wooded site there off of North Louisiana. Family units, it's a 9% low-income housing tax credit project, 89 units at 20, 30, 50, 60, and 70 AMI with 35 years of affordability and 30 million in total development costs. All right, next slide. Okay, Caribou Commons. This is 548 Caribou Road, Penrose. And I do believe this is a new, I'm looking at Sasha again, this is a newer development group. I don't believe we have funded them with Housing Trust Fund in the past. And Sasha's affirming that, thank you. So their request is 2.6. This is a vacant site on 548 Caribou, family units. It's a 4% tax credit with 100 units at 60% AMI, 35 years of affordability, and total development costs of 33.9 million. All right, next slide. I think we're coming to the end here. Sweeten Creek Apartments. So this is 1116 Sweeten Creek Road. You'll see Penrose is also the name developer here as well. Their request is 2.626 million in city CDBG-DR. It's a vacant site on Sweeten Creek. Family units, 4% tax credit, 126 units at 60% AMI, 35 years of affordability, with that total development cost of almost 44 million. All right, next slide. Okay, so thank you for bearing with me for that. Again, ultimately, I think I just want to again share appreciation to our development community, because having this number of applications is really excellent. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for our community, but that does make our job challenging in terms of providing a recommendation for HCD to consider in April 7th. And so with that, any feedback or any questions, we're happy to take those back as we start to shape up that recommendation. As I've said earlier in the meeting, we also are really looking for these shovel-ready projects. So that was another element of our application that we wanted to really promote, is really to understand how we could put these funds at work on a short horizon time frame and really looking at the shovel readiness of each deal. I think the other thing that's going to really come together in our recommendation is the understanding of the other funding sources that are requested. So while we also want to see the leveraging of resources, we also want to be very skillful in that determination of what applications are going to be successful with those other resource requests, and really to have a tailored approach towards acknowledging that. So as we all know, there's tax credit projects. There's just a lot to consider as they work through that process. And so we want to be very, very strategic about the overall recommendation and how we want to see and support these projects. So looking for any feedback. I'm also going to just tag staff in case I missed anything that we wanted to highlight. But again, hopefully in April, you'll be seeing a staff recommendation that really aligns with the criteria put forward in the NOFO, as well as some strategic recommendations around the shovel readiness of the projects that we seek to support.
So I have a couple of thoughts, questions. First, I'll start by saying I'd be really interested in learning more about the projects that are geared towards seniors. The second thing I'd want to know is what happens if if we decide to fund, but not the full request. In other words, will the applicants be able to move forward without the full request? And thirdly, I'm wondering what other funding sources would be available to these applicants. Like, are some of these eligible for bond funds, or would some of these be eligible for the self-help funding? And then council, I'll open it up to you if you have any more questions, comments, concerns, anybody?
I would like to see the number of units at each income level. Because I know they give the total amount, and then you'll see the income mix, but I want to know how many units at 20% AMI, how many at 60, how many at 80.
Nikki, it sounded like you were hitting on it. It sounds like we're going to get more information about what other funding they're requesting. So that kind of capital stack, which kind of addresses Antoinette's point too. I mean, I guess I mostly want to like celebrate a little. I mean, if it just goes to show, if we put the money out there, they will show up. This is 8 new LIHTC developers to the area. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And I hate that we had to have a tragedy to have that happen, but it makes me think of future bond cycles and strategies around LIHTC programs, et cetera. So exciting, right? This is exciting, a big undertaking as well. Some things that stuck out to me are the location in the city, like understanding where our affordability needs are and trying to prioritize those areas may be helpful. Another thing that stuck out to me is how many of these are around 100 units. And I don't know if that's a construction factor or finance factor. What we got, like 95, 100, 125, 100, 125. There's a lot of those. I don't know that we normally see that number. So I'm just kind of observing it, sharing that. But yeah, I think that's all the requests I have. I don't know how we can support you in the next month of getting through all this, or let us know, because that's a lot to undertake. And then we want to get through it in one meeting and rush it to council 5 days later to align. I mean, just so in case you're listening in, like the LIHTC program has its own deadline. So I'm assuming we're fast tracking to match that. Okay.
Absolutely. And if I can just maybe share some insights on a couple of pieces of feedback, this is excellent too, because it really helps us to know how to shape up our final recommendations. I will say at this point, we are looking at full funding for the applications, or at least developing a strategy that would help to secure that. I think that approach will just ensure that what projects that we do fund stand the best chance if we're able to meet that full funding. So, but we'll take a look at that just in case if there's any other options. But for right now, I think that's been the main point of conversation that we've had. And just so you know, too, we're working with our consultants, Tetra Tech, and through their subconsultant, Ankur Highgard. And he's really on deck to do a lot of the underwriting. As you all know, really analyzing the pro formas to ensure that all the numbers make sense and they follow with our standard market for affordability for tax credit projects. We're really leaning into the technical expertise of our subconsultant. And then, as you all are saying, there are other elements that may have specific points from this committee that can bring to bear. So I just wanted to reassure you too, to know that working with that consultant really allows us to be super sharp on the financial and technical underwriting of each project. And that's all for now. I think this, and yes, the eligibility of other resources, I do want to just highlight. We did see some applications that had indicated applications to the WNC Affordable Housing Loan Fund, which is the vehicle that the city invested in with bond dollars. So we are seeing kind of a mix of funding as each development seeks to kind of round out their overall capital stack. So,
Sage?
Yeah, just one more thing you made me think of. In the past, we've had developers come forward and say they were going to reduce their developer fee from the 9% or whatever. I'd like to know if anybody's interested in doing that. And then I guess just as an overall like thought process for me, since we're fast tracking, is because it's one-time money, I'm going to be looking for like one-time impactful results. Like I'm really looking for unit count. I want to pay attention to location, but I'm really looking for unit count and bedrooms and, like Shanika said, that AMI targets. If that helps at all.
So let me ask you this then, Sage. Say if one that has a lot of units requires, I don't remember the numbers, practically the max of what we have to give. Are you saying you would rather do that instead of maybe 3 that are asking for less, but once you add those 3 counts together, you get the same unit count as the larger one?
I am kind of betting that a lot of those asks are inflated in the hopes that they get as much as they can because it's early in the application process, but it's not, there's a lot of like 10 million, 10 million, 10 million, but I'm hoping through the pro formas and our expertise and these consultants that they'll be able to flesh out what the projects really need. And then some like Ferry Road, I'll be really closely eyeing what the county's doing because it's county project too. And, are we partnering on that? I know where is the weight carried in our bonds and the DR because we're the only ones that have it. So I don't know. I don't think everybody's going to need that whole ask to pull off their projects, and I could be wrong.
Do you have a desire to lean towards folks we've already worked with versus newer ones?
Not necessarily. I think it's always good. For a long time, one of our challenges and a goal at AHAC and HCD even was to ascertain more development partners, to get more partners into the community that were doing these types of projects. So I think that having more LIHTC developers interested in our area is a great thing. Building experience with them could be great too. But, we have great local partners already as well. So it's not to short them in any way.
And then it seems like I'm interviewing you, Sage.
I know, I'm sorry, but it helps. We're on the fast track.
Sorry, these are just questions I'm really asking myself. And I was like, let's see what's
okay. It's good to talk.
And then I'm wondering, do we want, I saw several, maybe not several, but a few on Sweeten Creek. I don't know that I want 3 on Sweeten Creek.
They're just so taxed down there with traffic.
In fact, I'll say I don't want 3 on Sweeten Creek.
Yeah.
So does that mean we want to kind of spread things around geographically throughout the city? I think I would like to see that.
Staff, you have a hard task. The other thing is the 9%. 2 of those are 9%. So we usually only get 1 award. Maybe in the past, the mayor and HCD chair wrote a letter. If there were a year to do it again, it was post a disaster back then, but we're post another disaster. Maybe we can ask for 2 awards because, those 9% projects are harder to get and might need different levels of support.
Remind me
So
of
many
that
layers.
page because I thought that we could only get 1 in times past, but we ended up with requests. We were able to get 3.
We got 2.
2, okay.
2 awards in 1 year, and it was a big deal. One of them was D Review, though, which has since not come to fruition. So I don't think there's like forgiveness of previous year's awards, get another award this year. But if we ask, maybe we can. Maybe it helps. Sasha?
Yeah, so I would just, as a part of, and another reason we've gotten so much interest here is because of the QAP, which is kind of the publishing of the rules by NCHFA for tax credits. And basically there were several incentives for applying, and there was a kind of a boost to the amount of tax credits being offered in the Western area, like a 12% boost. So I think there is a chance we would get to.
That's
So,
wonderful. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the QAP and the group like recognized our
Yeah.
problems. That's
yes.
wonderful.
Yeah, and there was a basis boost for if your projects if within the mid,
Ah,
that most
okay.
impacted, so they've done a lot to try to boost
So
housing.
it's not just our rescue dollars and the
No.
availability, it's also how the program is responding. So
Right,
that's
and then the
big
state,
too.
yes, and state CDBG-DR money will be going to some tax
Okay.
credits, some of the tax, at least one in each county, so.
Okay. One more random thought for you is that I do really I hope to see the downtown one in the mix because we need so much of the housing in an urban area. And that was a significant piece. Also a county land, so their participation will matter, but I don't know how you're going to prioritize all this. I wish you luck.
The good news is that a lot of the scoring is dependent on really complex like calculations that are based on what the responses are and the arithmetic behind it. So exactly how much CDBG they're asking, what the replacement reserves are, the details around their affordability and the units, how much the deferred developer fee is, and so on and so forth. And so a lot of that is very numeric. The piece I do want to flag is that the lower the request, we're seeing like the higher scores are kind of preliminary scores are coming out, and we're not completely done with the scoring piece. And I do want to flag though that those that are lower are often lower because of their funding stack and the other contingent resources that they have submitted, which are pending, not necessarily confirmed. So those are some dependencies that I just want to flag, particularly that of the state CDBG that's being requested by many of these projects, and the fact that the state has indicated likely one project per county, and the fact that that is something that we need to be mindful of.
Janice, do you still have a question?
I'm sorry, Janice.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I just joined. I didn't think I was going to be able to. But as to I hear what you're saying about too many projects on Sweeten Creek. But as Sasha just explained, there are more credits that are coming to the western part of the state. In lieu of that, I'm the liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've already been saying we're projecting that they're projecting that they'll be getting a number of things to CZs to review in April, because if these tax credits come forward, they have to get through the approval process before they can apply as well. And as far as location goes, as Alma was saying, the scoring at the Housing Finance Agency, it's really, the developers are just trying to get the kind of property, which is hard to find here, that's going to score well. I do think that the Housing Finance Agency would think about too many tax credits projects together. They do sometimes have scoring that says we want things further apart. But I guess I just wanted to comment, to some extent, that might be out of, I don't know how much control council would have on saying we want this one over that one. But almost at this point, if we're going to, as you said, it's notoriously competitive. If there's a chance to get two, and if they both happen to be on Sweeten Creek Road, that will be less money the city has to put in because there's that other source of funding. So that's just a consideration to let you know.
Understood. Council, any other questions?
I'll share what happens over at the Home Consortium, which is usually a body that receives money to do this similar process. It's a lot less money, but we go through a similar process and we organize in the spring and we back with funding a variety of projects. And over the years, it kind of evolved into we'd put a little bit of money behind each project to strengthen their May applications. And then we'd regroup in August and we'd say, all right, who was actually awarded? Congratulations. That's awesome. All of you that weren't, we're going to take back that money. We're going to give it all in on this one guy that was awarded. So that was a clumsy process in some ways, but it was a default for the timing that the program took. So is that something we're also looking at here, or these
think
are,
it's a
well, these, go ahead. These are actually rolling. They're not even awardee projects. Only 2 are the 9% awardees, right?
Well, I want to pick up on what you're saying with a confirmation that yes, I think what we do need to, and this is what we share with staff, is like we need to realize like we have noticed 10 million. There are additional resources that we can put on the table at a later date. So yes, we want to provide a strong application for projects that we want to see get accomplished in our community. And if there are other dependencies that, again, if the tax credits aren't awarded for whatever reason, or the other funding dependencies aren't awarded, then we have the ability to kind of come back, reassess based upon those announcements, and then make a new plan. So I think that's a great flag for us all, just to say we certainly want to make, like I said, the most strategic decision, but acknowledge that we may need to revise that if these other dependencies, how they may play out. So it's a good point to just keep in mind.
Okie dokie. Assuming we have no more questions or comments, thank you so much, Nikki. This has been really informative. And we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is also CDBG, but it's CDBG program update and 2026 funding discussion. And we'll hand this one over to James Shelton to walk us through. James.
Good morning. Thank you, guys. Good to be here. And thank you, Nikki, for the conversation on the CDBG-DR housing program. We're now pivoting to talk about our CDBG steady state program. So this is a program that the city participates in as an entitlement community. Because of our participation in the CDBG program, that's what partly made us eligible for the CDBG-DR grant itself. So this is our steady state that we are part of an annual cycle. So we're coming up on our annual action plan development now. So we are coming to you guys today with kind of the results of an application cycle that we ran this winter, and some initial funding recommendations. We won't be asking you guys to vote on anything today, but we'll be looking for your input and comments on our proposed kind of funding options that we might have. Next slide, please. So we get about $1 million each year to support community improvements, housing, economic development, and public services in our community through the CDBG program. We conducted an application process to award about $800,000 for the coming program year. We've reviewed those applications, and we'll be asking this committee's feedback and input on the recommended award options today. And we'll be back on April 7th, just as we will be with CDBG-DR housing. April 7th is going to be a fun day, with a request from this committee to recommend awards to City Council for approval. Next slide. Just want to highlight and appreciate, Sage, you bringing up the home program. We also run the home program out of our office. It's a separate funding source. It's a separate funding program for affordable housing development. We just yesterday launched our home ARP, our Home American Rescue Plan rental construction application. So that is $3 million that we just noticed for the construction of multifamily projects, not just in the city of Asheville, but because we operate as a consortium, it's eligible for projects across the entire consortium area. So that's Madison, Buncombe, Henderson, and Transylvania counties. We'll be having a developer conference on the 25th and accepting applications until May 15th. A part of that is also the Home ARP Supportive Services program that we'll be standing up later this year. That's an additional $1 million that we have for mental health and substance abuse services that we'll be pushing out that can also be used for rent support, and we expect that to come this summer. We are also going to be hosting, as Sage, you mentioned a little bit ago, an application cycle this fall for our home grant so that we can get in line with that tax credit cycle like we were discussing a minute ago. So running an application cycle for our steady state home grant in November, with contingent awards made in January and February to align with that tax credit cycle. That where we are now, we expect to be doing that with the home program next year. Next slide. So let's talk CDBG. We're anticipating about $971,000 in CDBG funding for the 2026 to 2027 program year. If you look at this table, you can see that we've generally trended lower in the amount of grant funding that we get each year. Congress has not really appropriated more funding to this program each year. However, HUD has added more grantees. So you have the same size pot of money that gets dispersed across the whole country, and it's going to more different grantees. So each grantee gets a little bit less. So that's where you see our grant kind of trending lower, where we expect to get around 971, but we'll get that affirmative grant letter here in the next couple of months, and we'll know exactly what we're working with. And just a reminder that 70% of these funds are to go to projects that benefit low to moderate income residents. We have typically done 100% LMI benefit with this program. We deviated a little bit of that during Helene to meet urgent business needs. So some of our program dollars were directed toward needs that we did not necessarily say needed to absolutely benefit low to moderate income residents, but we typically do that for 100% of our program. Next slide. So with that anticipated grant amount of about $971,000, we use 20% for administrative costs. So that keeps this as a pretty cost neutral program to the city. So that pays for staff time here, it pays for training. We are left with about $777,000 to award. And again, we'll have to come back and make actual award determinations based on our final grant amount later this spring. But that's how much we're expecting to have to make awards with, is $777,092. Of which we can use 15% for public services. So that's 145,000, leaving 631 that we will use for other program activities other than public services. But we don't have to necessarily do public service activities with our grant. That's a ceiling, not a floor. Next slide. In November, we consulted with this committee, and y'all helped us to establish the following strategies for this year's funding cycle. One was to encourage internal city departments to apply for funding, to provide that opportunity to imagine new ideas and fill existing funding gaps that we might have, and to direct those investments for LMI neighborhoods and residents, and building upon citywide expertise in federal grant administration, and potentially develop a year-to-year pipeline of capital projects. The second thing is y'all helped us establish some award minimums to reduce the overall number of awards, so that the awards that we are making are having an increased impact. This helps to increase staff capacity to effectively administer grant agreements, as well as to support disaster recovery initiatives. And those award minimums that we established were $40,000 for public service type activities and $100,000 for non-public service type activities. Next slide. So we undertook an application process in December into February. Since then, we've been reviewing applications and developing some recommendations based on the applicant pool, our expected staff capacity, and that overall program strategy that we just discussed. We're here today to review the applications and seek your input on those applications, and then we'll be back on April 7th to finalize those recommendations for City Council. With that recommendation to City Council after April 7th, that will kick off our action plan process. So different than CDBG-DR, which we've already got an action plan done. It's a 6-year action plan. With this, we're operating on an annual action plan. So we come back every year to do this cycle. We'll undertake a public comment period from April into June, and seek to do a public hearing at City Council and seek City Council's vote on June 9th to approve that action plan. And then we'll submit that to HUD for approval in June. Next slide. So our application scoring criteria, we score applications based on the program description. This is where we put a lot of weight. So we really want to see a sound program design, the capacity of the applicant to deliver on the program. Um, we want to identify community need and the population served, as well as budgeted and leveraged resources, as well as targeting priority groups in our community. Um, so this is if y'all have any questions about this, happy to discuss, but this is how we go about scoring, with the heaviest being in program description, as well as in how they budget other resources and how they're leveraging partners to deliver for how they're serving the populations they're serving. Next slide. So the applications we received, we've broken them out into different program areas. So as we review these, keep in mind that what you're looking at on each table will be different program area types, different activity types. That's how we've categorized this for our discussion. Next slide. So these are the public service activity applications that we received. You can see that that award minimum threshold is reflected here in the amount requested. So nobody requested less than that $40,000 floor. Um, we received a lot of applications from organizations that we've typically partnered with in the past, and some new applicants as well. Helpmate is an organization that provides emergency shelter for domestic violence survivors, as well as those fleeing domestic violence. On Track has a history of providing housing and financial capabilities. They do a home ownership program. Safe Shelter is a new applicant to the CDBG program. They're seeking funding for emergency shelter operations and crisis stabilization services. Pisgah Legal is a historical partner to provide legal assistance to prevent and reduce homelessness. Homeward Bound, we have partnered with in the past. They're seeking to provide case management services for HACA residents for housing stability and homelessness prevention. Haywood Street to provide case management for medical respite for folks experiencing homelessness. Hart House, they're a new applicant. They're looking to provide case management for people experiencing homelessness and seeking recovery. And Black Wall Street, case management for disaster recovery and education. We have sorted this by the average score. These scores were performed by my team, and multiple people on the team, so we averaged each score that we did, and so sorted that from greatest to least. So that's how you're seeing this presented to you here. Next slide. Housing service activities. These are activities that help to reduce impediments for folks to be housed or to find rental assistance. But also included here is home repair programs as well. You can see Helpmate is here. We partner with Helpmate on the home program to provide tenant-based rental assistance. This is seeking assistance for them to help pay for their staffing. You can see here that the City of Asheville Water Resources Department, there's a city department. And I apologize, y'all. I've got a little scratchy throat today, so I'm taking a little water break. They are seeking to provide lead service line replacements for low to moderate income customers. This is a program that is mandated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, where water utilities are required to identify and replace the resident service line, not just the utility line, but the connection from utility into the home that has or may have lead service lines. So they submitted an application for CDBG to do lead service line replacement. Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity is seeking to do home repair projects for Asheville homeowners. Safe Shelter, again, funding will support payroll for key housing services staff. Homeward Bound to provide housing focused supportive services for LMI households. And then Henderson County Habitat for Humanity submitted an application. However, they were ineligible because CDBG funds are only to be used within the city of Asheville. Unlike our home dollars, which we can use across the entire consortium area, we unfortunately cannot support Henderson County. Next slide, please. Micro enterprise assistance activities, Mountain BizWorks, doing business as Mountain Biz Capital is actually their main name, submitted an application for micro enterprise business coaching. They also proposed a partnership with Carolina Small Business Development Fund to do this activity together. So that was not necessarily a joint application, but they suggested in their application that they would be partnering on this program. And we also received an application from Institute Capital. They're a fairly new CDFI to our Asheville community, and they're looking to provide a microloan program. Next slide. Public facilities and improvements. These are activities that are typically geared toward either city-owned projects or for activities that are open to the general public, like a homeless shelter. Haywood Street Congregation has proposed a post-hospitalization housing for homeless persons, and Hart House Comprehensive Recovery Community has proposed to acquire a property to open a free supportive transitional living home. Next slide, please. So this is the full application picture, only showing the highest scores. So we received a lot of really great applications. For the purposes of today's conversation, we're going to move forward now into several different options and scenarios we'd like to discuss with you guys. We received over $4.5 million in requests for about 777,000 that we have available to award. So we have to be very strategic and discerning with how we go about making those awards. So these were the top scoring applications. We cut it off at 90, but we included 89.5 because there was a fairly large jump below that. But we wanted to include 89.5 just for today's conversation. Next slide, please. So again, just to remind you that we have an anticipated available to award amount of $777,000 that can go toward public service activities or for, housing services, micro enterprise, or public facilities. Next slide. So option A that we're presenting to you is to award the Asheville Water Resources Department for their lead service line replacement program, $677,054, or not 50, $677,054, and then to award HelpMate case management support for supporting their home TBRA program in the amount of $100,038. This honors the highest scoring applications and meets their requested amount as much as possible. It also meets a critical city responsibility to replace, to replace those service lines that have or may have lead. The cons to this is only one external award. Though new funding strategies were intended to reduce our overall number of awards. And y'all feel free to stop me at any point, and I've got 4 options I'm going to present to you. Next slide. Sophia, would you mind taking over for a minute while I clear my throat?
Of course. Good
you.
morning, y'all. I'm Sophia Benia. I'm the community development analyst. I'm just going to take off from where James stopped. So option B here is decreasing the funding to the Asheville Water Project just a bit more and including a micro enterprise assistance project with Mountain BizWorks. They've been a long-term partner. They submitted a fantastic application. As you can see, they requested $155,400 for their business coaching program. In this option, we would fund them that full amount as well as the HelpMate Housing Services Program with $100,000. This increases the award a little bit. As we see, this decreases the water, the water program a little bit, but and also helps to reduce administrative burden for these projects. However, again, as James said before, it does lower the total awards going out the door, which, we've discussed over the months with HCD's approval, as we're trying to move towards that goal over the years. If you look at the CDBG program in total. So next slide, please. All right, so option C, we're increasing as we go here. Still remaining around $521,654 for the letter placement project, funding Mountain BizWorks, Helpmate Housing Services, as well as funding Helpmate with their emergency shelter programs. So a little context between these two programs. Housing Services funds a case manager that actively gets domestic violence survivors into homes. So that's that $100,000 allocation, and the $60,000 allocation specifically goes to the ongoing support of the immediate needs of the shelter and forms of staffing there as well. Additionally, here we have On Track Financial Services. They do a really fantastic housing and financial capabilities program for low and moderate income folks seeking financial counseling services. And the next slide, please. All right, and here we kind of are at
I'll
the
take it
bottom
from here.
here. Oh, sorry.
I'll take it from here. Thanks, Sophia.
Thanks,
What
James.
this last option introduces is kind of a split large award between the Asheville Water Resources Department and Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity for home repair. So the main difference between that option C and D is introducing that, so that we can address the critical need for home repair in our community. This does continue a wide array of supportive activities. It honors the highest scoring applications and still meets the critical responsibility to replace lead service lines, is also meeting the deep need for home repairs. Just want to note that every additional subrecipient does increase administrative burden, and additional subrecipient awards does reduce funding available for the city projects.
Are these presented in order of staff preference?
There is no particular staff preference. What we're working away from is, from the first option, is the highest scoring applications were listed. So if we can go back 2 or 3 slides, please, to option A. These are the highest scoring applications, and we're attempting to award these applications their requested amounts. So working from highest scoring applications down to the least and trying to honor what they requested and what they need. So we are awarding Helpmate with this option. You would be awarding Helpmate their full ask, but you would not be awarding the Asheville Water Resources Department their full ask. So that's, you can't meet every demand and ask that's out there, but this would honor the highest scoring applications, but also you wouldn't be able to fund the full ask of the Water Resources Department. And then as you progress through these slides, you're moving down further. You go to option B. You're introducing more and more array of activities, while still honoring the highest scoring applications, but each new activity reduces how much you're able to address that large demand, that large ask from the Water Resources Department.
Gotcha.
And I'll share, if I can. I think fundamentally this is similar to what we talked about earlier. We have a large number of applications. We have a small amount of funding. So I think what we're hoping to really have the dialogue with HCD today is what questions do you have? What direction would you like to go in? I think we're just trying to figure out what our strategy would be. So we're happy to really take input today and really come back with a strong staff recommendation. But I think kind of what we were thinking is to really allow a conversation to take place, really talk about pros and cons with these different options, and then see if we could really take that feedback, come back to the committee in April with a final recommendation.
So I have a little bit of feedback, but Sage got her hand up first. So Sage.
Go ahead, Antoinette, it's fine.
I'm wondering what another option would look like to have water, Helpmate, and emergency home repair. Sage?
I'm just looking for a little more context on the water resources and the lead pipes. How many homes, how many people are we helping? Each time you reduce that number, what does it mean? And where did this come from? I mean, it's a private property issue. Is this something that we realize after Helene? Like it's a kind of a random thing in our purview all of a sudden, and then it's being placed at the top. So I just like to understand more where it's coming from. Most of these others are more, in line with what we've been doing. Yeah, I don't know how to guide you in this. I feel like there's a lot of decisions to be made between the last conversation and this one. So I hope you all's mental states are holding up okay. Um, yeah, I guess when it comes to like things like the micro enterprise category, it's great. There's a new institute capital on the line, but we have such a historic, successful relationship with the others. It's hard to weigh those, I would probably lean on the historic partnership. So we've had success with beyond, experimenting with a new one right now.
I think the pipes are anti-displacement strategy.
They're anti-displacement.
So I can speak a little bit to that. Or Ben, you have your hand up. I'll let you go, but I can.
Yeah,
You
that
can-
helps.
A little bit.
No, go ahead, James. You probably have the background, so I'll let you go. Then I could fill in anything. But I'll just say this has been a project we've been required to do for many, many years, even before Helene. So it's not a new thing. But James, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Ben. So the Asheville Water Resources Department, as the water utility, is required by the Environmental Protection Agency to identify and make an inventory of all lead service lines or potential lead service lines that are between the water utility line and the home connection, where the water goes into the house. And as part of that, the Water Resources Department has already received about a $4 million grant from the state to do this type of work in Shiloh. And they're already undertaking that work. They've also already doing the work to identify, not just in that one community, but across the entire service line, where there may be lead service lines or where there are lead service lines. And they've already identified over 400. And this is a mandate that is not necessarily totally unfunded, because there is state money that is being passed down from the EPA that they've already accessed. But this is pretty well an unfunded mandate that the city may have to be able to fund with this program or with some other capital resource. And EPA in the program guidelines recommends seeking out CDBG funds as a potential funding source to meet the LMI population need to do this lead line replacement. I think we have until, Ben, you may know this better than I do, but I think we have until 2036 or 2038 to complete the work. So this is something that will be with us for a little while. And the city will likely have to find a funding source for this, whether it's CDBG or something, but it's an EPA mandate that it be done.
Yeah, and that's tying it all into other. Now I recall all that. I just didn't realize this is part of that. And I guess it just makes me think that those should be CIP things, like not CDBG. But I hear you. They're recommending this as an option, so it's on the table. We're looking at it. I appreciate the extra context.
Sure. And the
Did
one
James-
reason that it's difficult to get on CIP is what we're talking about is not the water utility. You're actually talking about the private homeowner service connection. So where you can use city taxpayer dollars to do that water utility, it's sometimes a little difficult to do the private home investment, and CDBG can do that. Other funding sources can do that as well. But I think we run into issues when you think about CIP being used for that connection from the water main to the home.
So many details. It makes sense. But so EPA kind of put this under the public purview to fix private issues.
Ben, were you going to add something?
Nope, James covered everything exceptionally well. So thank you, James.
Thank you, Ben. And Vice Mayor, you asked about what it would look like to fund water, helpmate, and did you say home repair?
Emergency home repair, yes.
Emergency home repair. So that would look like if we funded helpmate at their full ask, that would be a $100,038 award, and it would leave about $330 ish for each of the others if you split it even. They both, the water service project requested 800,000. Habitat requested 700,000. So if we wouldn't be able to obviously fund their full asks, but if we wanted to fund them evenly, it would look at about 330 something thousand each.
I'm not necessarily beholden to funding them evenly. The thought is that while AHAC is looking at emergency home repair policy, we don't want them to have no money to move forward in the interim. So that's the bigger picture. But Sage?
I mean, it's sort of unrelated to that. I was just going to add, if anybody knew from the helpmate perspective in their applications, if they're still having to find rentals throughout the county as opposed to in the city at all. Historically, I know that was a problem and we had to grant them permission to utilize our funds outside the city. And that might weigh into some of this for me this time.
Yeah, so where the home funding that they have been awarded can be used in the city, in the county, the CDBG funding is intended to support the staffing, to support the city funded side of things.
Okay, so only city with this particular one. Okay.
I think we'd have to, Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we may have to seek an additional waiver if we were to continue doing that, or if that was I'd have to do a little research to see if that's a outstanding broad stroke, we can continue doing that or not.
Okay, thank you.
But in their
Can we take a look
application,
at
it is intended. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to look at option C. And about option D.
I like seeing that on track in there. Mostly because I'm really passionate about a home ownership and down payment program that I think we could desperately grow. And that's the preparation tool, but
Yeah, option C and D introduce the public service type activities into the conversation, which we're capped at how much we can do at 15% of our grant. The first two options we discussed don't fund public service type activities. Again, we're not mandated to do that, but we can do those up to 15% of the grant.
didn't Mountain BizWorks get a huge chunk of funding recently?
They did. They're in the process of working with us with our CDBG-DR program to administer a business recovery grant program. They were awarded $10 million to do that. This is a separate program to do micro enterprise business coaching. So it's a different activity. This is an activity that we have historically funded with them in our prior grant years, where they bring micro enterprises into their Mountain BizWorks program to coach them on how to scale and how to operate as a micro enterprise. The grant program is very much recovery grant and passing working capital dollars to businesses, and this is a different type of activity. But it's a good point.
Thank you.
And so I just appreciate the conversation because I think, with this really specific need from water and really understanding how we want to be good stewards of our CDBG dollars, also knowing the need in the community is great. I appreciate kind of the centering on these other options, and it may be that we could look to fund the water line replacement over multiple years. I think their period of compliance for the EPA is several years from now, but it might become a strategy that we want to commit to this and to our community, but then allow like a funding plan with our CDBG dollars that maybe mirrors the CIP in some ways, and just to have that commitment. So then we also know what the balance could be made available to our public nonprofit partners external to the city. So again, appreciate this conversation as we're trying to figure this out together.
I love that notion, Nikki.
Me
Funding
too.
for a period of years. That would be quite helpful. Is this the last slide, James?
This is the last slide. Yeah. So what we'll do is kind of take what we've heard from you guys today, try to wood shop a little bit, maybe a hybrid funding recommendation based on those options and the feedback y'all have given. And we may come back as well with kind of a strategy proposal for looking at water and how we might look at it as a multi-year commitment, not necessarily a multi-year contract, but a multi-year understanding that they can expect some level of funding in CDBG so that they know that, okay, over the next 5 to 10 years, we might get X amount of dollars through this program, and they've got a clear picture of what they might have to seek elsewise and how the city might have to fund those lead line replacements otherwise. But I appreciate that. Is there any other thoughts or comments on this item? We'll be back again on April 7th. Yeah.
I have one more, James. I can't see everybody because I had to move to my phone. I apologize. But one more, the longer I sit with this, and it may change, the more I think we should just do the simplest option, because I'd love to see a little bit of money go to helpmate to maintain. I think at this point we've funded them for so many years, they're probably relying on it. I feel like the home repair, it sounds like we're working on policy, but I feel like there's other home repair dollars. If the lead pipes are that crucial and part of our anti-displacement strategies as we move towards, more housing activity, I mean, let's just knock out as much of it as we can. I'm kind of leaning at, I'm also considering y'all's heavy load and the previous discussion we just had and all that's on your plate that isn't normally, and the administrative function that it takes to do 5 programs instead of 2. So if that helps your input at all, simplifying does maybe have a little more of my interest this year. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Any more questions, comments, or concerns? Very well then. Thank you so much, James. Nikki.
Thank you all so much. I apologize for the.
And Sophia. Thank you, Sophia, for jumping in. Okay, if there are no more questions or comments, we'll move to the final item on our agenda, which is public comment. Do we have any speakers in the queue?
Yes, we do. Give me just 1 second.
Okay.
Caller ending in 5702. You have 3 minutes. One moment, let me check.
Are you able to unmute the phone line stuff? It just looks muted on our end. So that's what we're seeing, if that's helpful.
Okay. Okay, caller, can you try again?
Yeah. Good morning. This is Andy Barnett with the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to reinforce the point that Vice Mayor Mosley had made around the pending availability of a new bond-funded repair program. I think there's 2 points that I'd like to make. One would be to encourage you to consider some funding for repairs through the CDBG program, as that's been really the only designated public funds for repair activities within the city of Asheville, as a bridge to the new bond-funded repair program that's in consideration at AHAC right now. I also think that it would be helpful if you're making the choice to restrict CDBG funds to the repair activity, that HCD could give some guidance to AHAC around the need to bring this new policy proposal online in a more timely fashion, so that we understand the policy consideration that's being made here to cut money from what has been the funding stream for repairs, and the kind of the urgency to bring a new policy online. So thank you very much.
And that's it for callers.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we leave, just want to give a quick reminder that next month we'll be meeting earlier than usual, so we can go over some of the things we just discussed earlier today. So our April HCD meeting is going to be on April 7th at 10 o'clock. That's April 7th at 10 o'clock. Are there any more questions or announcements? If not, we can adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.